The Galactic Council was a vast and complex body, made up of representatives from hundreds of different species, each with their own cultures, languages, and technologies. It had been formed to ensure peace and cooperation across the galaxy, creating rules and guidelines for the many different worlds to follow. But even the Council had its flaws. As much as they prided themselves on diplomacy and mediation, they were often slow to act, especially when it came to the smaller and younger species. Among these was Earth, a young planet still finding its place among the stars. Though its people were brave and determined, they had no real power compared to the ancient civilizations that filled the Council's ranks. On one cold, silent morning, a message arrived at the Council's headquarters. A report, urgent and filled with distress, came from Earth. The Krenzak's dominion, a brutal and warlike species known for their violent conquests and disregard for galactic treaties, had launched a sudden and vicious attack on Earth's colonies. These colonies were young, barely established, and ill-prepared for such a force. Hundreds of innocent lives had already been lost. Earth's request was clear. They needed help, and they needed it now. The Council members gathered in their grand meeting chamber, their thoughts divided. Some were quick to speak, suggesting immediate military action, but others hesitated. The Krenzak's dominion was powerful, and a direct confrontation with them could mean war. The last thing the Council wanted was to upset the delicate balance of peace that had been established across the galaxy. After all, Earth had only recently joined their ranks. They were a young species, not yet proven in the eyes of many. Captain Elias Vance, Earth's representative, stood before the Council, his voice calm but filled with an unmistakable edge. He was a man used to pressure, having served in the military for years. But this was different. This wasn't just another diplomatic mission. This was a matter of survival for his people. Honorable members of the Galactic Council, Captain Vance began, his eyes scanning the faces of the gathered leaders. My people are under attack. The Krenzaks have already struck our colonies, and we are doing everything we can to defend ourselves. But we need your help. A murmur rippled through the room. The Krenzaks had always been a thorn in the side of the Council, but few had ever dared to challenge them directly. The Council's response had always been to appease them, to keep them in check with delicate diplomacy. But now, this small, young human race was asking for help, and they were getting little more than empty promises in return. The silence in the room grew thicker, and finally, an elderly reptilian delegate named Sarah spoke up. Captain Vance, we understand your pain, but we must consider the bigger picture. The Krenzaks are dangerous, and any action we take could lead to galactic war. We must think of the stability of the entire galaxy, not just the Earth. Vance's gaze hardened, and he took a slow breath before replying. I understand your concerns, Ambassador Xera, but my people have already suffered because of your indecision. The Krenzaks care nothing for your treaties. They've already broken them. You say you want peace, but peace isn't built on inaction. You've been sitting on your hands while my people are dying. This will not stand. Xera shifted uncomfortably in his seat. The room fell quiet, and for a long moment, there was no response. The human representative's words had struck a chord with many in the room, and the older species of the Council found themselves faced with an uncomfortable truth. They had been complacent. They had assumed that Earth's small, developing civilizations were no threat, that they wouldn't dare challenge the established order. They were wrong. Captain Vance straightened up, his expression resolute. Let me be clear, Council. I'm not asking for your help. I'm not asking for your permission. I'm telling you this. Earth will handle this on its own, and you will not forget what happens next. My people are not helpless, and we will defend ourselves, even if it means standing alone. The room was filled with a stunned silence. The members of the Council looked at each other, exchanging nervous glances. The younger species had always been respectful of the Council, following the rules, adhering to the peace agreements. But Captain Vance had made it clear. Humanity would no longer sit by and be ignored. "We will not be your pawns," Vance continued, his voice carrying the weight of a promise. "We will fight back. If you will not act, we will." And with that, he turned and left the meeting room, leaving the council members to ponder the consequences of their indecision. As the doors closed behind him, the murmurs started again, whispers of disbelief, of fear, and of uncertainty. Humanity had just made a powerful declaration, and the galaxy would never be the same. Back on Earth, the mood was tense. The attack by the Krenzak's Dominion had left a deep scar on the people, but it had also sparked something in them, a fire of determination that no one had anticipated. While the Galactic Council debated and delayed, humanity wasn't waiting. Earth's leaders, military commanders, and scientists were already working day and night, preparing for a response. The message had been clear. Earth would not just defend itself, it would make the Krenzaks regret ever attacking. Captain Ilias Vance returned to Earth, a man with a mission. But the problem was clear. Earth didn't have the same resources or advanced weaponry that the Dominion possessed. The human fleet was small, its technology primitive compared to the Krenzak's war machines. What Earth had, though, was something far more powerful: ingenuity. A war council was convened in a secure underground facility, far from the prying eyes of the press. The brightest minds from across the planet gathered: engineers, strategists, biologists, hackers, and military leaders. The room was filled with urgency as each person presented ideas on how to fight back. "We don't need to fight them head-to-head with their weapons," General Sofia Martinez, a veteran strategist, suggested. "What we need is to outsmart them, use their strength against them. Guerrilla tactics, sabotage, and surprise. We don't have to be bigger, we just need to be smarter." Her words struck a chord with everyone in the room. Earth wasn't going to beat the Krenzaks with force alone. It needed to rely on its creativity and adaptability. Captain Vance looked at his officers, his voice calm but filled with conviction. "We have to make them regret every decision they've made. We'll use their own technology against them. We'll build our weapons from their mistakes." One by one, the ideas began to take shape. Instead of traditional warships, which Earth couldn't afford to build, the engineers repurposed asteroid mining vessels, giant, heavy-duty ships designed to break apart asteroids for mining purposes. These ships were not designed for combat, but their size and durability gave them an edge. They could withstand much more damage than a typical warship could. "We'll outfit them with weapons," said Dr. Alan Pierce, a lead engineer. "Mining lasers can be modified into powerful beam weapons. The hulls of these ships are thick enough to endure hits from the Krenzak's weapons, and we'll add additional armor. These ships won't be sleek or fast, but they will pack a punch." At the same time, Earth's tech experts worked to create a network of cyberattacks that could disrupt the Krenzak's technological infrastructure. The Dominion ships were heavily reliant on advanced systems to operate, and if Earth could hack into those systems, it would cause chaos. A few well-timed cyberattacks could cripple their fleet's coordination, making them easy targets. But it wasn't just technology that Earth had to worry about. The Krenzaks had biological weapons, diseases and toxins that could wipe out entire populations in days. In response, Earth's biologists and medical experts developed countermeasures, creating antibodies and vaccines that could protect Earth's forces and its citizens from the Krenzak's most deadly strains. As the strategy began to take shape, the leaders of Earth knew they had something special. This wasn't going to be a conventional war. They were going to fight with everything they had: ingenuity, adaptability, and relentless spirit. The first phase of the plan was simple: sabotage. Earth's agents, trained in stealth and infiltration, would slip behind enemy lines, disrupting the Krenzak supply chains and communication networks. Ships, stations, and factories that supported the Dominion's war machine would be destroyed or rendered useless. It wouldn't be a fast operation, but it would sow chaos and confusion, weakening the Krenzaks from the inside. Meanwhile, the human fleet, small but deadly, would target the Dominion's most vulnerable spots. No grand battles or head-on confrontations. Instead, Earth's ships would strike quickly, taking out Krenzak ships in ambushes and guerrilla-style attacks. The Krenzaks would never know where the next strike would come from. The final stage of the plan was to hit the Krenzaks at their very heart, their homeworld. It wasn't about destruction, but about sending a clear message. Earth had the power to fight back, and if necessary, it would do whatever it took to protect itself. But that wasn't something Earth could do alone. It needed allies. And as the Council remained silent, Earth reached out to the smaller species, the ones who had suffered under the Krenzaks' rule, the ones who had always been too afraid to act. One by one, Earth's diplomats met with leaders from these oppressed species. They offered assistance, resources, and a promise of protection. And they asked for one thing in return: support. Slowly but surely, Earth built an alliance of species who had suffered under the Krenzaks' tyranny. The first wave of attacks began quietly. A group of human ships ambushed a small Krenzaks convoy near a remote asteroid belt. The Krenzaks didn't know what hit them. As the dust settled and the remains of the Krenzak ships drifted in space, the human ships disappeared back into the shadows. It was a message sent directly to the Dominion. Earth wasn't just surviving, it was fighting back. Back on Earth, as the attacks began to show results, there was a feeling of unity and strength among the people. They were no longer the weak, overlooked species. They were a force to be reckoned with, and they were going to make the Krenzaks regret ever attacking them. The first steps of humanity's revenge had begun. The Krenzaks' dominion was not a species to be underestimated. They had built their empire through relentless conquest, destroying worlds and civilizations that dared stand in their way. For centuries, they had ruled over countless planets. Their reputation as merciless conquerors spread across the galaxy. The sudden and mysterious attacks from Earth had caught them off guard, and their response was swift and brutal. General Varrock, one of the highest-ranking military leaders in the Krenzaks' dominion, sat in his command center aboard the massive warship Borakan. His reptilian eyes narrowed as he reviewed the reports coming in from his commanders. His mind was already working through the possibilities. It was clear the humans were behind these unexpected strikes. The attacks were coordinated, well-planned, and precise, far more advanced than anything the Krenzaks had expected from such a young species. The humans are becoming a problem, Varrock said Zira, his chief strategist. They've disrupted our supply lines, and our ships are struggling to maintain their coordination. We need to find the source of these attacks and eliminate it before it escalates. Varrock's tail flicked in irritation, his sharp claws tapping against the control panel in front of him. He had underestimated the humans, believing them to be weak, unorganized, and incapable of real resistance. Now, they had proven otherwise. But Varrock was not a leader who took defeat lightly. His people had conquered countless species, and Earth would be no different. He would find a way to crush this rebellion before it could spread. The humans are nothing more than pests, Varrock growled, his voice low and menacing. We will hunt them down, one by one. I want every ship in my fleet on high alert. Send out scouting parties to locate their hidden bases. They will learn their place in the galaxy. But as the Krenzaks launched their counteroffensive, Earth's forces were already ahead of them, preparing for the next phase of the conflict. While the Dominion scrambled to deal with the sabotage attacks, humanity had begun to prepare for something much bigger. The Krenzaks' aggression had only strengthened their resolve, and Earth's forces were not backing down. Back on Earth, the alliance of smaller species had begun to take shape. With each passing day, Earth's military strength grew, bolstered by the support of those who had suffered under Krenzak's rule. The humans had become a beacon of hope for many. They were a symbol of resistance, and the oppressed races saw them as a chance for freedom. Captain Vance, now overseeing the coordination of Earth's forces, stood in the war room, surrounded by maps and holographic displays. He had come to understand the Krenzaks better than most. He knew their weaknesses. He knew they relied too heavily on brute force, often underestimating the tactics of their enemies. It was time to use that to Earth's advantage. "We need to hit them hard," Vance said, his voice steady but filled with determination. "The Krenzaks are not used to resistance. They think they can crush us with sheer power. We'll prove them wrong. We need to make them question everything they know about warfare." Vance's plan was bold and dangerous, but it was their best chance at gaining the upper hand. The idea was simple. While the Krenzaks were focused on hunting down Earth's ships in one sector, Earth would strike in another, taking them by surprise. They would attack the Krenzaks' most vital resource points: mining stations, energy hubs, and food supplies, cutting off their ability to sustain their war effort. But it wasn't just about the Krenzaks' military resources. Earth was targeting something far more precious: the Dominion's pride. The Krenzaks valued dominance above all else, and their public displays of power were meant to intimidate the galaxy into submission. If Earth could strike at the heart of their arrogance, it would send a message that would reverberate across the stars. While the human fleet began its preparations, Vance's team worked tirelessly on a series of covert operations designed to destabilize the Krenzaks from within. Their spies had already infiltrated several Krenzaks outposts, gathering crucial intelligence and disrupting communications. Meanwhile, Earth's hackers were busy exploiting weaknesses in the Krenzaks' advanced technology, sabotaging their weapons systems, and causing confusion on the front lines. The Krenzaks, however, were not without their own resources. Varroc's fleet, now fully mobilized, began hunting down Earth's ships with a vengeance. Their tactics were direct, overwhelming, and brutal. They launched several massive raids on Earth's mining stations and resource facilities, hoping to cripple the humans' ability to fight back. The Krenzaks, after all, had the power to outgun any opponent, and they believed it was only a matter of time before Earth's resistance would crumble. But the humans weren't backing down. In fact, with each Krenzak strike, Earth's resolve only grew stronger. The humans were adapting faster than the Krenzaks had anticipated. Their ships, now armed with advanced weaponry and shields designed to withstand Krenzaks' fire, were able to hold their ground in a way no one thought possible. The Krenzaks began to realize that this war would not be as easy as they had imagined. As the Krenzaks continued their search for Earth's hidden forces, they were met with one surprise after another. Their ships were ambushed, their supply lines were cut, and their warriors began to question the ease of their conquest. The tables had turned, and the Krenzaks found themselves on the defensive for the first time in centuries. The first true victory for humanity was within their grasp, but Captain Vance knew that this was just the beginning. The war was far from over, and the Krenzaks were relentless. However, the humans had proven one thing: they were not to be underestimated. The battle for Earth's survival had only just begun. The Krenzaks had always believed they were unbeatable, and for many years, they had been right. Their military was vast, their technology advanced, and their rule over countless species seemed unshakable. But now, as the war with Earth progressed, cracks were beginning to appear in the Krenzaks' armor. The humans, against all odds, were proving themselves to be a far more formidable enemy than anyone had expected. Captain Elias Vance stood in the war room aboard the Eagle's Wing, one of Earth's newly refitted ships. His eyes were fixed on the holographic map in front of him, where the movements of the Krenzaks' fleet were displayed. Earth's forces had successfully carried out a series of raids on Krenzak supply lines and outposts, and the enemy was beginning to feel the pressure. It was a victory, but it was only a small part of a much larger plan. "We've slowed them down, but we need to do more," Vance said, his voice steady. "The Krenzaks are starting to regroup. We can't give them a chance to retaliate." General Sofia Martinez, his trusted strategist, nodded in agreement. "We've been hit hard by their raids as well. We can't afford to sit back and wait for them to strike again. It's time to take the fight to their doorstep." The room was filled with the best and brightest from Earth's military and scientific community. The war had become a global effort, with everyone, soldiers, engineers, and civilians, working together toward a common goal. But as the war progressed, Vance knew that their next move would need to be more decisive. The Krenzacks might be strong, but their arrogance was their greatest weakness. Vance leaned forward. "We've been attacking them in the shadows, hitting them where it hurts. Now it's time to bring the fight to their homeworld. If we can strike their capital and disrupt their leadership, we might be able to break their will." The plan was dangerous, but it was their best shot at turning the tide of the war. The Krenzacks had their fleet spread across multiple sectors, but their heart, their capital planet, Vornak, was the most critical target. If Earth's forces could cripple the Krenzacks' command center, it could shift the balance of power in the war. The Krenzacks would no longer have the ability to coordinate their attacks, and the rest of the galaxy would see that Earth was no longer just a weak, defenseless planet. The mission would require careful planning. Vance knew that it wasn't just about brute force. Earth's fleet had to be precise, their attacks swift and coordinated. They would strike at the heart of the Krenzacks' dominion, Vornak, their homeworld, a planet heavily guarded by one of the largest fleets in the galaxy. It would be a suicide mission for any conventional force, but humanity had something that the Krenzacks didn't, a willingness to do whatever it took to win. As Earth's forces prepared for their boldest strike yet, the Krenzacks were not sitting idle. General Varrock, still determined to crush Earth's resistance, had begun to consolidate his forces. His ships were now massing near the Vornak system, and the Krenzacks had been on high alert since Earth's initial raids. "We will not let this world slip from our grasp," Varrock muttered to himself as he observed the reports of Earth's movements. "This will be their final mistake." The Krenzacks were not used to losing. Every attempt to fight back against Earth's unexpected assaults had only served to anger them more. The Dominion's pride had been wounded, and their response would be swift and violent. But what the Krenzacks didn't realize was that Earth had already anticipated their reaction. The humans had developed new tactics that would make it nearly impossible for the Krenzacks to predict their next move. They knew that a direct assault on Vornak would be disastrous, so they would have to use deception, cunning, and speed to achieve their goal. As Earth's fleet gathered in the shadows of the Vornak system, Captain Vance watched the ships prepare for the most important mission of their lives. His mind raced with possibilities, but he was focused on one thing: victory. The humans had come too far, fought too hard, to back down now. "Remember," Vance said, addressing his crew, "this isn't just about us. It's about every species that's been under the Krenzacks' boot for centuries. We're not just fighting for Earth, we're fighting for the galaxy." His words echoed in the room, and for a moment the crew fell silent. They were ready. They understood what was at stake. The first part of the plan was to create a diversion, an attack on one of the outer Krenzacks colonies, far from Vornak. This would draw the attention of the Krenzacks fleet, forcing them to spread their forces thin. As the Krenzacks rushed to respond, Earth's fleet would sneak past the defenses surrounding Vornak, slipping through a series of narrow asteroid fields and uncharted space routes. The final phase of the plan was the most dangerous. Once inside the Vornak system, Earth's ships would strike swiftly and decisively. They would disable key infrastructure, communications arrays, energy grids, and military outposts before the Krenzacks could regroup. And if all went according to plan, they would leave behind a message for the Krenzacks' dominion. Earth was no longer a target. It was a force to be reckoned with. As Earth's fleet entered the final stages of preparation, the Krenzacks began to mobilize their forces. The two sides were about to clash in a battle that would decide the fate of the galaxy. Captain Vance looked out into space, knowing that the turning point in this war was just around the corner. The humans had fought hard to survive. Now, they were ready to strike back. The final stage of the mission was approaching. Captain Elias Vance and his crew aboard the Eagle's Wing prepared for the most dangerous operation of their lives. They had pulled off a series of successful raids, causing significant damage to the Krenzacks' supply lines and military installations. But now, The humans were about to face the true heart of the Krenzak's empire, their homeworld, Vornak. Vornak was a massive planet, covered in vast deserts and jagged mountain ranges, with towering cities that had stood for millennia. The Krenzaks had built their empire here, making it a symbol of their dominance. The planet's surface was heavily fortified with military installations, shield generators, and vast fleets of ships patrolling the skies. It was a fortress in space, and it was Earth's final target. Captain Vance stood at the front of the war room, his eyes focused on the holographic map of the Vornak system. The mission ahead would be dangerous. The Krenzaks had concentrated a significant portion of their fleet around Vornak, and a direct attack would be suicide. But the humans had a plan that required both strategy and precision. "We've got one shot at this," Vance said, his voice calm but firm. "Once we engage, we won't have the luxury of time. We need to hit them fast and hit them hard." General Sofia Martinez nodded from her position at the console. The diversion worked. Their forces are scattered across several sectors, and their fleets are stretched thin. This is our chance. If we can disable their key systems, communications, power grids, and military bases, we can cripple their ability to respond. Vance turned to the rest of the team. "Once we hit them, we're in and out. No time for mistakes. If we succeed, it could change the entire course of this war." The plan was simple but risky. Earth's fleet would strike quickly, using the element of surprise to disable the Krenzaks' most important infrastructure. The Krenzaks, accustomed to their dominance, had failed to anticipate such a coordinated and intelligent attack. They would be unprepared for the sudden assault. The diversion had already been set in motion. Earth's fleet had launched a series of small attacks on Krenzak's outposts across the galaxy, drawing the enemy's attention away from Vornak. While the Krenzaks scrambled to deal with these scattered attacks, Earth's fleet was quietly making its way toward Vornak, moving through asteroid fields and uncharted space routes, avoiding detection. As the Earth fleet neared Vornak, tension filled the air. Every officer and crew member knew what was at stake. The Krenzaks were a ruthless enemy, and there would be no second chances if they were caught. The humans had to strike quickly and efficiently. "We're almost there," Vance said, staring at the glowing red planet of Vornak through the viewing window. "Prepare for launch." The Earth fleet was composed of sleek warships, each designed to be fast and maneuverable. They had been outfitted with advanced technology, including stealth systems that made them nearly invisible to enemy sensors. As they entered the outer orbit of Vornak, Vance's crew prepared to engage. They had worked together for months, training for this moment, and now it was time to put everything on the line. Vance's voice echoed in the ship's intercom. "All hands, prepare for battle. The Krenzaks won't expect us. Let's make sure they never forget us." In the command center of the Eagle's Wing, the officers worked in perfect synchronization. General Martinez gave the signal, and the fleet deployed, moving swiftly toward Vornak's orbit. The Krenzaks, still scattered and unaware, were caught off guard. The humans were here, and they were not backing down. The first strike came from Earth's fleet. A series of high-powered laser beams sliced through the Krenzaks' outer defenses, disabling the energy shields that protected the planet. The Krenzaks' forces scrambled to respond, but the humans had already infiltrated their airspace. "Keep them off balance," Vance ordered. "Hit their power grids next." The Eagle's Wing and the other ships moved in closer to Vornak, weaving between the Krenzaks' defensive lines. The Krenzaks had never faced an attack like this before. Swift, unpredictable, and highly coordinated, Earth's fleet struck at the heart of the Krenzaks' empire, attacking military bases, energy facilities, and communications hubs. Within moments, the Krenzaks' forces were thrown into disarray. Verok, the Krenzaks' general, watched in disbelief as his military forces crumbled before him. The humans had breached his planet's defenses, and he had underestimated them. The humans were not just attacking Vornak, they were attacking his pride, his leadership, and his legacy. They're everywhere. Varrock bellowed as his fleet struggled to regain control of the situation. Get our forces in position. We can't let them take Vornak. But the humans were already several steps ahead. As the Krenzak struggled to regroup, Earth's fleet moved like a shadow, hitting their targets and disappearing before the enemy could respond. The Krenzak's forces were scattered, their defenses compromised, and their leadership in chaos. The humans were making history. As Earth's fleet continued their assault, the galaxy began to take notice. The Krenzak's empire, once thought to be invincible, was faltering, and humanity was the force that was causing the collapse. Captain Vance stood at the helm of the Eagle's Wing, watching as the battle unfolded. His heart raced, not with fear, but with pride. Earth's people were united in this fight, and together they were proving that no empire, no matter how powerful, could stand forever. "We've got this," Vance whispered to himself. "This is just the beginning." The battle for Vornak raged on, but Captain Elias Vance and his crew knew they were on the brink of something much bigger than they had ever imagined. The Krenzak's forces were beginning to fall back, their once mighty empire cracking under the pressure of the humans' relentless assault. As Earth's fleet continued to strike with precision, it became clear that the Krenzaks were not prepared for a war like this, one where every move had been calculated and every moment counted. On board the Eagle's Wing, Captain Vance stood in the command center, watching as the situation unfolded. His mind was racing with thoughts of what they had accomplished, but he also knew that the hardest part was yet to come. Vornak was the heart of the Krenzak's empire, and taking it down would mean facing their strongest defenses. "Captain, we've disabled several of their key military installations," General Sofia Martinez reported, her voice calm but with a hint of excitement. "But we still need to neutralize their flagship. If we can take that out, we'll cripple their ability to command and control the rest of their fleet." Vance nodded. The Krenzak's flagship, the Dreadnought, was the largest and most powerful ship in their fleet. It was their symbol of strength and the center of their operations. If they were to win this battle, they would have to take it down. "We've taken out their smaller ships, but the Dreadnought remains a major threat," Vance said, his tone steady. "It's heavily protected. We'll need to hit it from multiple angles at once. General, prepare the fleet for one final push." Martinez looked at the screen, where the Dreadnought loomed, a dark shadow against the stars. It was surrounded by a swarm of Krenzak's fighters and battle cruisers, but its main weapons and shields made it nearly invulnerable. "We can't afford to make mistakes now," Martinez said. "We need precision, and we need to act fast." Vance took a deep breath, his mind focused. They had come this far. The Krenzaks were reeling from the human onslaught, and now was the time to strike decisively. "Move in," Vance ordered, his voice unwavering. The Eagle's Wing and the rest of the fleet moved forward, their engines humming as they accelerated toward the Dreadnought. The Krenzak's flagship was on high alert, its sensors scanning the surrounding space for any signs of the humans. But they were not prepared for the speed and stealth of Earth's ships. The Eagle's Wing, along with its allied fleet, was equipped with advanced cloaking technology that made them nearly invisible to enemy sensors. It was the perfect weapon for this final strike. As the fleet neared the Dreadnought, the battle began in earnest. Earth's ships emerged from the shadows, firing their weapons at the Krenzak's fighters and battle cruisers. Explosions erupted in the cold vacuum of space as human and Krenzak ships collided in a blur of energy and destruction. The Krenzak's flagship, now aware of the human attack, turned to face its opponents. Massive cannons along its sides lit up, firing energy blasts at the approaching ships. But the human fleet was ready. They had learned the Krenzak's tactics over the past few months, and now they were using their knowledge to outmaneuver the enemy. "Focus fire on their engines," Vance commanded, his eyes scanning the battle. "We need to slow them down before we can take out their weapons." The Eagle's Wing and the rest of the fleet concentrated their fire on the Dreadnought's engines, hoping to disable its ability to move. The powerful blasts from the human ships rocked the flagship, but its defenses were still holding strong. General Martinez paced back and forth in the command center, watching as the battle played out on the screen. "We need to get closer," she said. "If we can get in range, we can disable their shields and take out their weapon systems." Vance nodded. The Eagle's Wing was a smaller, faster ship compared to the Krenzak's flagship, and its agility was its greatest asset. They would have to close the gap and get in range for a devastating final strike. "Prepare for a direct assault," Vance ordered. "Take them head-on. We'll use our cloaking system to get as close as we can." The fleet surged forward, using the element of surprise to get within striking distance of the dreadnought. The Krenzak's flagship fired its massive weapons in retaliation, but the humans were too quick, dodging the blasts with expert precision. As the Eagle's Wing closed in on the flagship, the tension on board the ship was palpable. The crew knew that this would be the final test, the moment that would determine whether they would win or lose. "All systems ready for the final strike," Vance said, his voice calm but filled with purpose. In the command center, General Martinez made the call. Now, the Eagle's Wing and the Allied ships fired their most powerful weapons at the dreadnought. Energy blasts slammed into the flagship's shields, causing them to flicker and weaken. The Krenzak's flagship retaliated, but it was too late. The human ships had already breached its defenses, and the final strike came crashing through. With a deafening explosion, the dreadnought was torn apart, its massive form disintegrating in a burst of fire and debris. The Krenzak's flagship, once the symbol of their power, was no more. A cheer erupted on board the Eagle's Wing as the fleet watched the destruction unfold on their screens. The battle for Vornak was not over, but the humans had dealt the Krenzaks a devastating blow. Their command structure had crumbled, and the tides of war had shifted in favor of Earth. Captain Vance stood tall, his eyes filled with determination. The Krenzaks had underestimated humanity's strength, but now they would see the full extent of what Earth was capable of. "We've won the battle, but the war isn't over," Vance said, his voice steady. "Let's finish what we started." The battle was won, but the war was far from over. Captain Elias Vance stood on the bridge of the Eagle's Wing, staring out at the shattered remains of the Krenzak's fleet. The destruction of the dreadnought had sent shockwaves throughout the galaxy, signaling a dramatic shift in the balance of power. The once feared Krenzak's empire was on the brink of collapse, and Earth was standing tall as the undisputed force to be reckoned with. Yet, as the remnants of the battle continued to echo in the stars, Captain Vance knew that this was only the beginning of a much greater struggle. With the fall of the Krenzak's flagship, their command structure had crumbled, but there were still factions within their empire, desperate to hold on to what little power they had left. The Krenzak's warlords were readying themselves for one final stand, and Vance's fleet would have to face them head-on. "We've crippled them, but they won't go down without a fight," General Sofia Martinez said, joining Vance at the front of the bridge. "The Krenzaks might have lost their flagship, but their warriors are fierce, and they still control vast parts of their empire." Vance nodded grimly. He had seen the brutality of the Krenzaks firsthand and understood that they would never surrender easily. However, the humans had something the Krenzaks didn't: unity and determination. They had come together as a force, not only to defend their home, but to protect every life in the galaxy. "We've faced impossible odds before," Vance said, his voice calm but filled with resolve. "But we're not going to stop now. We'll finish what we started." The fleet prepared to push forward, and soon they were once again on the move. The Krenzak's warlords, realizing that their hold over the galaxy was slipping, had begun to unite in their final attempt to resist. Earth's forces, however, were not intimidated. In fact, the human resolve only grew stronger with every passing day. As the fleet traveled deeper into Krenzak's controlled space, the tension grew. It was clear that the Krenzaks weren't just fighting to win. They were fighting to survive. And in a desperate attempt to turn the tide, they had begun to rally all of their forces to launch one last, all-out attack on Earth's fleet. The humans, however, had prepared for this moment. Vance and his team had anticipated the Krenzax's desperation, and they had spent weeks strategizing for this final conflict. With every ship in the fleet now fully equipped with the latest technology and weapons, they were ready for whatever the Krenzax threw at them. The moment of truth arrived as Earth's fleet came face to face with the combined Krenzax forces. The battle erupted in an explosion of energy and sound as ships on both sides clashed in a frenzy of laser fire and missiles. The humans fought with a single-minded purpose, each crew member knowing that their survival and the future of humanity depended on the outcome of this war. Captain Vance, his mind sharp and focused, issued orders with precision. The battle was chaotic, but humanity's spirit shone through. The fleet moved in unison, each ship playing its part in the grand strategy. They had the upper hand in tactics, and they used it to their advantage. "Target their command ships," Vance ordered. "We need to break their morale." As Earth's fleet cut through the Krenzax lines, they struck at the heart of the Krenzax forces, their command ships. These heavily guarded vessels held the key to the Krenzax's ability to coordinate their attacks. With their communications disrupted, the Krenzax forces began to falter, their once great war machines beginning to crumble under the weight of the human assault. On the ground, General Martinez led her forces into battle against the remaining Krenzax ground troops. The Krenzax had fortified their positions, but humanity's soldiers were not afraid. They fought with the kind of courage that could only come from a people who had everything to protect. "We're not just fighting for Earth," Martine said, her voice fierce. "We're fighting for every world out there, every life in the galaxy that the Krenzax would destroy." The battle raged on. But as the hours passed, it became clear that the humans were winning. The Krenzax forces were disorganized, their morale shattered, and their leadership in disarray. One by one, the Krenzax strongholds fell, and their last remaining warlords were captured or forced to surrender. With a final, decisive strike, Earth's fleet destroyed the last of the Krenzax's military infrastructure. The war was over. Back on the Eagle's wing, Captain Vance stood tall, his eyes scanning the stars. The Krenzax Empire, once the most feared power in the galaxy, had fallen. The humans had proven that no matter the odds, they could rise to the challenge. "We've done it," Vance said softly. "But this victory is just the beginning. The galaxy is a vast place, and there are other forces out there, forces we don't yet understand. We'll be ready for them. We'll keep moving forward." As the fleet set course for Earth, a new era was beginning. Humanity had proven itself not only capable of defending its home, but of taking its place as a powerful force in the galaxy. The Krenzax Empire had fallen, and in its place, a new hope for peace and unity had emerged. Captain Vance knew that the journey was far from over, but with every victory, Earth was proving that no matter how powerful the enemy, humanity would always find a way to rise and overcome. The future was theirs to shape.